At the family dinner, my daughter-in-law insulted me in front of everyone. "This old hag only adds to our medical bills." I sold the house and disappeared. When they got home from work, my phone rang 99 times. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. I never thought words could cut deeper than knives until that night at our family dinner. My name is Nellie. I'm 72 years old, and that was the moment when my own family showed me what they truly thought of me. The dining room was filled with the aroma of my homemade lasagna, Thomas's favorite since he was a boy. My son had invited his colleagues over, and I'd spent the entire day cooking. My arthritic hands ached, but I wanted everything to be perfect for him. The table was set beautifully with the china I'd brought into this house 30 years ago when it was still mine. "Mom, could you bring out more water?" Thomas called from the head of the table, my husband's old spot. I nodded with a smile and headed to the kitchen where Jovi, my daughter-in-law, was texting on her phone. "Jovi, dear, could you help me carry these plates? My hands are acting up again." She didn't even look up. "In a minute," she said, though we both knew what that meant. I managed on my own, as I always did. The conversation at the table flowed around me as if I were invisible. Thomas was telling stories about work. Jovi was laughing too loudly at everything his boss said, and the children were absorbed in their tablets. I sat quietly in the corner, not really part of the gathering, just there to serve. Then came the moment that changed everything. "So, Nellie," Thomas's boss asked, "what do you do with your days now that you're retired?" Before I could answer, Jovi let out a dramatic sigh. "She mostly goes to doctors and picks up prescriptions. Right, Nellie?" She turned to Thomas's colleagues with a strained smile. "This old lady is only good for increasing our medicine bill." The table fell silent. I felt blood rush to my face as I stared down at my barely touched lasagna. Through the painful silence, I waited, hoped, for Thomas to say something, anything, to defend his mother. The woman who had raised him alone after his father died when Thomas was only 10. The woman who had worked 2 jobs to put him through college. But Thomas just laughed awkwardly and changed the subject. That night, I lay awake in my small bedroom at the back of the house I had scrimped and saved for, the house I had foolishly signed over to Thomas 5 years ago, when he promised to always take care of me. "It's your home too, Mom," he'd said then. Now I understood the truth. This wasn't my home anymore. I was just a guest who had overstayed her welcome. Morning came after a sleepless night. I could hear Thomas and Jovi rushing around, getting ready for work, shouting at the kids to hurry up for school. Nobody knocked on my door to check if I was okay after last night. Nobody apologized. It was as if nothing had happened. When the house finally emptied, I went to the kitchen and made myself a cup of tea. My hands trembled as I sat at the table where just hours before I'd been humiliated. Memories flooded back, not just of last night, but of all the small cruelties that had been building up over the years. The way Jovi rearranged my kitchen without asking. The way Thomas consulted me less and less about family decisions. The comments about my outdated clothes, my old person habits, my medications that were so expensive. The time Jovi suggested I move to the basement so they could turn my room into a home gym. I had told myself they were just words, that family was family, that staying together was what mattered. But now I saw clearly what I had been denying for years. I wasn't valued here. I wasn't respected. I was tolerated at best. My teacup clinked against the saucer as I set it down with sudden resolve. I was 72, not dead. I had given Thomas this house, but I had kept a secret from him. A savings account his father had started before he passed. I hadn't touched it in decades, watching it slowly grow, saving it for a rainy day. Well, the storm had finally come. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd been considering for months, but had never had the courage to call. My voice was surprisingly steady as I spoke. "Hello? Is this Golden Sunset Realty?" "Yes, I'd like to speak with someone about selling a house." The woman on the other end sounded surprised. "Your house, ma'am?" I looked around at the kitchen where I'd prepared thousands of meals for my family. The living room where Thomas had taken his first steps. The garden I had planted with my own hands. "No," I said firmly. "Not anymore." Morning came after a sleepless night. I could hear Thomas and Jovi rushing around, getting ready for work, shouting at the kids to hurry up for school. Nobody knocked on my door to check if I was okay after last night. Nobody apologized. It was as if nothing had happened. When the house finally emptied, I went to the kitchen and made myself a cup of tea. My hands trembled as I sat at the table where just hours before, I'd been humiliated. Memories flooded back, not just of last night but of all the small cruelties that had been building up over the years. The way Jovi rearranged my kitchen without asking. The way Thomas consulted me less and less about family decisions. The comments about my outdated clothes, my old person habits, my medications that were so expensive. The time Jovi suggested I move to the basement so they could turn my room into a home gym, I had told myself they were just words, that family was family, that staying together was what mattered. But now I saw clearly what I had been denying for years. I wasn't valued here. I wasn't respected. I was tolerated at best. My teacup clinked against the saucer as I set it down with sudden resolve. I was 72, not dead. I had given Thomas this house, but I had kept a secret from him. A savings account his father had started before he passed. I hadn't touched it in decades, watching it slowly grow, saving it for a rainy day. Well, the storm had finally come. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd been considering for months, but had never had the courage to call. My voice was surprisingly steady as I spoke. "Hello, is this Golden Sunset Realty?" "Yes. I'd like to speak with someone about selling a house." The woman on the other end sounded surprised. "Your house, ma'am?" I looked around at the kitchen, where I'd prepared thousands of meals for my family, the living room where Thomas had taken his first steps, the garden I had planted with my own hands. "No," I said firmly, "not anymore." Chapter 2. The Silent Decision. The meeting with the real estate agent confirmed what I'd suspected. I still held partial legal rights to the house. When I transferred the property to Thomas 5 years ago, my lawyer had insisted on a clause that required my consent for any sale. I hadn't thought much of it then, viewing it as a mere formality. Now it felt like a lifeline. "Mrs. Stewart, are you certain about this?" Mr. Grayson, the real estate agent, peered at me over his glasses. "Once we list the property." "I'm certain," I replied, surprised by the firmness in my voice. "How quickly can we proceed?" After he left, I stood in the center of the living room, taking in every detail. The faded mark on the wall where Thomas had thrown a baseball at age 12. The small chip in the mantelpiece from when we moved in my old piano. The window seat where I'd read countless stories to Thomas as a child, and later to his children. Each memory flickered like an old film, beautiful but distant. Somewhere along the way, I had become a supporting character in my own home. The dull ache in my chest confirmed what I'd been avoiding for years. I was lonely here, lonelier than I would be anywhere else. The house sold within a week. The housing market was booming, and our neighborhood had become desirable for young families. I signed the papers in Mr. Grayson's office, my hand steady despite the magnitude of what I was doing. "The new owners can move in immediately," he said, handing me a cashier's check. "And your new apartment is ready whenever you are." I had found a small place by the ocean, in a community for active seniors. The brochure showed smiling people my age walking on the beach, taking art classes, living lives that seemed worlds away from my quiet existence in Thomas's shadow. With the check safely deposited into my account, I began the delicate process of deciding what to take with me. I couldn't pack up everything. That would alert Thomas and Jovi before I was ready. Instead, I focused on what truly mattered. Photo albums from before Thomas met Jovi, my jewelry, my husband's watch, and the quilt my mother had made. Each evening, when I heard Thomas's car in the driveway, I would emerge from my room as if nothing had changed. I'd listen to Jovi complain about her coworkers and Thomas grumble about traffic. I'd help with dinner and clean up afterward, all while carrying the weight of my secret. "Mom, we're thinking of remodeling the kitchen this summer," Thomas mentioned one evening, not looking up from his phone. "You'll need to stay with Aunt Martha for a few weeks while the construction happens." I nearly laughed at the irony. "Whatever you think is best, dear." "And we should talk about your medications," Jovi added, her tone making it clear this wasn't a suggestion. "The copays are getting ridiculous. Maybe we should look into cheaper alternatives." "My medications," For blood pressure, arthritis, and the heart condition I'd developed after a mild attack last year, were apparently still an inconvenience to them. I just nodded, knowing it wouldn't matter soon. The final stage of my plan came together when Thomas announced they would all be away for the weekend. "Jason's soccer tournament is in Philadelphia," he said, referring to my grandson. "We'll leave Friday morning and be back Sunday night." "That sounds wonderful," I replied, my heart racing. "I'll have dinner ready when you return." That Friday, after they left, I called the moving company. 2 young men arrived promptly, carrying out the few boxes and furniture pieces I had designated. My entire life, condensed into a small truck. "Is that everything, ma'am?" one of them asked. I looked around at the house that had been my home for 30 years. "Yes," I said softly. "That's everything." After they left, I placed a single envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside was a brief note and a copy of the sale papers. I hadn't been able to find the right words, settling finally on simple truth. "I've given all I can. Now I need to live what remains of my life. Don't try to find me. I'll contact you when I'm ready." Before leaving, I walked through each room one last time. In Thomas's childhood bedroom, now converted to a home office, I paused at the bookshelf where a single photograph remained. Thomas at his college graduation, his arm around my shoulders, both of us beaming with pride. I gently touched his face in the image. "I love you," I whispered, "but I can't be invisible anymore." The taxi was waiting outside. The driver, a kind-faced man in his 60s, helped me with my last suitcase. "Where to, ma'am?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the house fall away from my shoulders. "Silver Bay Apartments, please. By the ocean." As we drove away, I didn't look back. The setting sun cast long shadows across the street, marking the end of one chapter and the uncertain beginning of another. For the first time in years, I felt something stirring in my chest. Not the familiar ache of being overlooked, but something lighter, something like hope. My phone remained silent for now, but I knew that by Sunday night, it would explode with calls and messages. Thomas would be shocked, then angry. Jovi would be furious about losing the house. My grandchildren would be confused. But for these 2 days, I had peace. And after years of fading into the background of my own life, peace was worth whatever storm would follow. Sunday evening arrived with the gentle rhythm of waves outside my new apartment window. I'd spent the weekend arranging my few belongings, making this small space feel like mine. The one-bedroom apartment wasn't grand, but the ocean view more than made up for its modest size. I'd already met a few neighbors who had greeted me with warm smiles and invitations for coffee. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I glanced at the clock on my nightstand, 7:36 p.m. By now, Thomas and his family would have returned home. They would have walked into an unusually quiet house. Perhaps Thomas called out, "Mom, we're back," expecting me to emerge from my room with questions about their trip. Maybe they noticed my absence immediately, or maybe it took them a few minutes to realize something was wrong. But I knew the moment they found my note. At precisely 7:42 p.m., my phone began to ring. Thomas's name flashed on the screen. I watched it ring until it stopped, only to start again seconds later. Then came the text messages. "Mom, what is this? Call me now." "What do you mean you sold the house? This isn't funny. Where are you?" I set my phone down on the small dining table and walked to the window. The sunset painted the ocean in brilliant shades of orange and pink. In all my years living in that house, I had forgotten how much I loved the water. My late husband, Jack, had promised we'd retire by the sea someday. At least one of us had made it. My phone continued its desperate symphony behind me. Calls from Thomas. Calls from Jovi. Even calls from neighbors who had presumably been enlisted to help find me. I imagined the panic, the confusion, the anger spreading through my old neighborhood. The thought should have filled me with guilt, but instead, I felt oddly peaceful. After an hour, I finally picked up the phone to check. 99 missed calls. I switched it to silent and placed it in a drawer. Tomorrow would be soon enough to deal with the fallout. That night, I slept better than I had in years, lulled by the sound of waves rather than whispered complaints about the burden I had become. Monday morning brought clarity and sunshine streaming through my new curtains. I made myself a proper breakfast, something I rarely did at Thomas's house. usually rushing to stay out of Jovi's way in the kitchen. I savored each bite of my toast and eggs, watching seagulls soar over the water. Around noon, a sharp knock on my door startled me. My heart raced. Had Thomas found me already? I peered through the peephole to see an unfamiliar woman with silver hair and a bright floral dress. "Hello?" I called through the door, unwilling to open it just yet. "Hi there. I'm Sarah from 3B. We met briefly yesterday when you were moving in. Just wanted to invite you to our book club meeting this afternoon. No pressure, but thought you might like to meet some folks." Relief washed over me as I opened the door. "That sounds lovely, Sarah. Thank you." As Sarah chatted about the book they were discussing, my phone vibrated in the drawer where I'd left it. I could ignore it a little longer. The book club met in the building's community room, a cheerful space with comfortable chairs and large windows overlooking a garden. 8 women and 2 men, all around my age, welcomed me without prying questions about where I'd come from or why I'd moved. For 2 hours, we discussed a novel about second chances and new beginnings. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Nellie, you have such insightful comments," said Eleanor, a former English teacher with kind eyes. "We meet every Monday. Hope you'll become a regular." "I'd like that," I replied, meaning it. By evening, I could no longer avoid reality. I retrieved my phone from the drawer. 57 new messages and 42 more missed calls. Most were from Thomas, growing increasingly frantic. "Mom, please call me. We need to talk about this. The new owners showed up saying they're moving in tomorrow. Is this some kind of joke? Mom, I'm calling the police if you don't contact me by 5 p.m. Dad would be so disappointed in you." That last one stung, but it also confirmed I'd made the right decision. Jack would never have used guilt to manipulate me. He had always encouraged my independence, even as he protected me. What would disappoint him was seeing how invisible I'd become in my own family. I took a deep breath and typed a simple message. "I'm safe. I need time. Please respect that." Immediately, my phone rang. "Thomas." I declined the call and turned off my phone. The next morning, I visited the manager's office to ensure no one could confirm whether I lived in the building if they came looking. Mrs. Rivera, the property manager, listened sympathetically. "Family troubles?" she asked gently. "You could say that." "Don't worry, Nellie. Your privacy is protected here. Many of our residents have come for a fresh start." She patted my hand. "Take your time finding your footing. Silver Bay is a good place to heal." I spent the day exploring my new neighborhood, the small bookstore on the corner, the cafe with outdoor seating facing the ocean, the community center offering classes in everything from watercolor painting to Tai Chi. Each discovery felt like unwrapping a gift I'd denied myself for too long. By Wednesday, I felt brave enough to check my phone again. The barrage had slowed, but the messages had grown more desperate. "Mom, please, we're worried sick. Just let us know you're okay. The kids keep asking for Grandma. What am I supposed to tell them? Whatever we did, we can fix it. Just come home." Home. The word echoed hollowly. That house hadn't been my home for years. But as the initial relief of my escape faded, a new question emerged. Could I build a real home here, on my own? At 72, the sea breeze carried the salt-tinged promise of possibility as I walked along the shore that evening. For the first time in decades, the future was entirely mine to shape. 1 month into my new life at Silver Bay, the rhythm of my days had transformed. I woke each morning to sunlight dancing across my bedroom walls rather than the sound of Jovi's complaints. My arthritis still troubled me, but the ocean air seemed to ease the worst of it. Or perhaps it was the absence of constant stress. I'd made a home of my small apartment, arranging my few treasured possessions with care. My husband's watch sat on the bedside table. Family photos, carefully selected to include only happy memories, adorned the walls. The blue throw pillow Jack had given me on our last anniversary held the place of honor on my reading chair by the window. The book club had become the highlight of my week. Sarah, my neighbor from 3B, had introduced me to a circle of friends who valued me for my thoughts and experiences, not for the meals I could prepare or the grandchildren I had raised. "Nellie, you simply must join us for Tai Chi," Sarah insisted one morning as we walked along the beach. Our morning ritual now, Gerald says it's done wonders for his arthritis. Gerald, a retired naval officer with a booming laugh, had been widowed for 5 years. He'd taken to joining our beach walks, always bringing coffee for the 3 of us. I'm not sure I'm coordinated enough for Tai Chi, I protested. Nonsense, Gerald said. If my old sea legs can manage it, you'll be fine. So I found myself in the community center that Thursday, attempting to follow the gentle movements of Master Liu, a serene man in his 60s. I wobbled and lost my balance more than once, but no one laughed or showed impatience. By the end of the session, my body felt looser, more alive. You did well for your first time, Gerald said afterward, walking me back to our building. It gets easier. Does it? I asked. And we both knew I wasn't just talking about Tai Chi. He nodded, his eyes understanding. The pain never fully goes away. Grief, betrayal, disappointment. But we learn to move with it rather than against it. I told my new friends only the bare outline of why I'd left my family, that I had been taken for granted, that I needed space. They respected my privacy while offering quiet support. In their company, I began to recognize the woman I had once been, before I became merely Thomas's mother, or the kid's grandmother. My phone remained mostly silent now. Thomas had finally stopped his daily barrage of calls, settling into a pattern of texting once a week. His messages oscillated between guilt trips and anger, with occasional glimpses of genuine concern. I responded sparingly, just enough to let him know I was alive and well, but maintaining the boundaries I'd established. The grandchildren sent drawings and short voice messages that pierced my heart. I missed them terribly, but I wasn't ready to invite Thomas and Jovi back into my life. Not yet. You know, Sarah said one evening as we shared a bottle of wine on my small balcony, healing doesn't mean you have to cut them off forever. I sighed, watching the moonlight shimmer on the waves. I know, but I need to find my footing first. For too long, I defined myself by what I could do for them. I don't know who I am outside of that. Well, from what I've seen, you're a woman with excellent taste in books, a surprising talent for watercolors, and a friend who listens deeply. She raised her glass. That's a good start. The watercolor class had been Gerald's suggestion. I'd resisted at first, insisting I had no artistic talent. But the instructor, Margot, believed everyone could create beauty. My first attempts were clumsy, but gradually I learned to capture the changing moods of the sea, the way light transformed ordinary objects into something magical. You have a natural eye, Margot told me one day, studying my painting of the harbor at sunrise. You see what others miss. Her words stayed with me, echoing with unexpected significance. Perhaps that had always been my gift, seeing what others overlooked. I had seen the potential in Thomas when he struggled in school. I had seen the beauty in our modest home when others might have focused on its limitations. I had seen the worth in a quiet life of service to my family, even when that service went unrecognized. But I had failed to see my own value, independent of what I could provide to others. 2 months after my arrival at Silver Bay, I received an unexpected text from Thomas. Mom, I found some of your medical records while cleaning out your room. Your heart condition is worse than you told us. Please tell me you're taking your medications and seeing a doctor. The message caught me off guard. I hadn't realized he'd even known about my heart condition. He'd never shown interest in my medical appointments before. I'm seeing a cardiologist here, I replied truthfully, taking my medications. Don't worry. What I didn't tell him was that Dr. Chen, my new cardiologist, had been impressed with my improved numbers. Whatever you're doing, keep it up, she'd said at my last appointment. Your blood pressure is down, and your heart rhythm is more stable. Less stress can work wonders. Less stress. Such a simple prescription. Yet it had required leaving behind everything familiar to fill it. As summer turned to fall, my new life deepened its roots. I had my regular coffee shop where Mia, the young barista, started preparing my chamomile tea the moment I walked in. I had my favorite bench on the boardwalk where I could watch children play, easing the ache of missing my own grandchildren. I had friends who checked on me if I missed a day at Tai Chi. I had, in short, built a life where I mattered, not for what I gave, but simply for who I was. One crisp October morning, as I painted the fishing boats bobbing in the harbor, my phone rang with Thomas's number. Usually, I would let it go to voicemail, but something, intuition perhaps, made me answer. Mom, his voice cracked with emotion. We need to talk. Thomas's voice carried a weight I hadn't heard since he was a teenager confessing to a damaged car. I clutched my paintbrush tighter, focusing on the horizon line I'd been working on. "I'm listening," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Not like this. Not over the phone." He paused. "Please, Mom. I need to see you." The paintbrush trembled slightly in my hand. Was I ready for this? For 3 months, I'd been healing, building a life where I wasn't invisible. The thought of facing Thomas, and possibly Jovi, threatened to unravel that progress. "I don't think that's a good idea right now, Thomas. Mom, please." His voice cracked again. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. About what happened. About how we treated you. I need to say some things face to face." I set down my paintbrush and closed my eyes. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and possibilities. "Just you," I finally said. "Not Jovi, not the children, not yet." He exhaled audibly. "Thank you. Just text me your address and—" "No." The firmness in my voice surprised us both. "Not at my home. There's a cafe called Oceanside on Harbor Street. Friday at 2 p.m. After we hung up, I sat motionless, staring at my half-finished painting. Sarah found me there an hour later, still clutching my phone. "Thomas is coming," I told her. "He wants to talk." She squeezed my shoulder. "Are you ready for that?" "I don't know, but I need to find out." The next 2 days passed in a blur of anxiety and preparation. Gerald insisted on walking me through what he called emotional self-defense techniques from his support group for widowers. "Remember, Nellie, you set the boundaries now. If he starts making you feel small again, you leave. Simple as that." Friday arrived with unusual clarity. The October sky a perfect blue. I dressed carefully in clothes I'd bought since moving to Silver Bay. A teal sweater that matched my eyes and comfortable slacks that weren't the frumpy, old lady clothes Jovi had always criticized. I even wore the silver earrings Gerald had given me for my birthday last month, a simple gesture of friendship that had touched me deeply. I arrived at Oceanside 15 minutes early, choosing a table by the window where I could watch Thomas approach. My hands trembled slightly as I sipped my tea, rehearsing what I would and wouldn't say. Then I saw him, walking uncertainly along the boardwalk. He looked thinner, his shoulders slightly stooped. For a moment, I saw the little boy who had once clung to my hand at his father's funeral, and my heart constricted. He spotted me through the window, his pace quickening. When he entered the cafe, he stopped, as if suddenly unsure. I didn't stand to embrace him. "Mom," he said, sliding into the chair across from me. "You look different." "I am different," I replied simply. Up close, I could see the dark circles under his eyes, the new lines on his forehead. He ordered coffee with a distracted air, his gaze returning to me repeatedly, as if trying to reconcile the woman before him with the mother he remembered. "How did you find me?" I asked when the waitress left. "I hired someone." At least he was honest. "After the 2nd month, when you wouldn't tell us where you were, the kids were having nightmares that something terrible had happened to you." A pang of guilt shot through me. "I told you I was safe." "You disappeared." "Mom, you sold our house and vanished. Who does that?" "Someone who's been invisible for too long," I said quietly. His face flushed. "Is that what this was about? Some kind of revenge because you felt ignored?" I took a deep breath, remembering Gerald's advice. "This meeting won't work if you're going to twist my words." "Thomas, I didn't come here to be attacked." He opened his mouth, then closed it, visibly collecting himself. "I'm sorry. I don't understand how you could do this to us." "To you? The way I remember it, I was the one being treated like a burden." Thomas had the grace to look ashamed. "Jovi shouldn't have said that." "The thing about the medicine bills, it was cruel. It wasn't just what she said that night. It was years of small cruelties, Thomas. Years of being treated like an afterthought in my own home. The home I gave to you because you promised to take care of me." He stared into his coffee. "I thought I was. We gave you a place to live, didn't we? You never had to worry about bills or rent." I leaned forward. "Is that all you think I needed? A roof over my head? What about respect? What about being treated like a person with feelings and value beyond what I could do for your family?" "Mom, that's not fair. We were busy with work and the kids, too busy to notice when I was hurting, too busy to stand up for me when your wife humiliated me in front of your colleagues." My voice remained steady, though my heart raced. "You let her treat me like a servant, Thomas. You watched it happen for years and said nothing." The color drained from his face. I never thought of it that way." "That's the problem. You didn't think about me at all." We sat in silence as the waitress refilled our cups. Outside, children chased seagulls along the boardwalk, their laughter carrying through the glass. "The house sold for a lot," Thomas finally said. "Was that your plan all along, to cash out and leave us scrambling?" I set down my cup with deliberate care. "We both know that's not true. I left you that house 5 years ago because I trusted you to honor your promise to make it a home for all of us. You broke that promise, so this was punishment." "No, Thomas, this was survival." I met his gaze directly. "I didn't leave to hurt you. I left because staying was hurting me." Something shifted in his expression, the first glimmer of genuine understanding I'd seen. "We've been staying with Jovi's parents," he said, his voice smaller. "It's not easy." I imagine not. I'd met Jovi's mother only a few times, but her sharp tongue and critical nature made it clear where Jovi had learned her behavior. "The kids miss you terribly." A pause. "I miss you too, Mom." For the first time since he'd arrived, I felt my resolve waver. I missed my grandchildren with an ache that never quite subsided. I even missed Thomas, not the man who had allowed me to become invisible, but the boy I had raised, the son who had once looked at me with pure love. "I'm not coming back, Thomas. Not to live with you. I've made a life here. I'm not asking you to come back." He reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of mine. "I'm asking for a chance to make things right." I studied my son's face, the face I had memorized as a newborn, had kissed countless scrapes on, had watched mature through years of joy and hardship. There was sincerity in his eyes, but I had been disappointed too many times to trust easily. "What does making things right look like to you?" I asked carefully. Thomas shifted in his seat. "I don't know exactly, but I want to try. The kids need their grandmother, and He paused, struggling with words that didn't come easily to him. "I need my mother. And Jovi?" I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. His expression tightened. "She's been difficult. This whole situation has forced some hard conversations between us. About how she treated you. About the kind of example we're setting for the children." I wrapped my hands around my teacup, absorbing its warmth. "I won't be disrespected again, Thomas. Not by you, not by Jovi, not by anyone." "I understand." He hesitated, then added, "Would you consider meeting the kids? They ask about you every day." The thought of seeing my grandchildren made my heart ache with longing, but I needed clear boundaries. "At a park," I suggested. "Just them and you at first. Then we'll see." Thomas nodded, relief softening his features. As we finalized plans for the following weekend, I felt something shift between us. Not forgiveness exactly, but the first tentative step toward it. When I returned to my apartment, Sarah was waiting on my small patio with 2 glasses of wine. "Well?" she asked as I sank into the chair beside her. "It was a beginning." I accepted the wine gratefully. "We're meeting again next weekend. He's bringing the children to the beach park. And how do you feel about that?" I stared out at the ocean, its steady rhythm a reminder of how much had changed and how much remained uncertain. "Hopeful," I admitted, and terrified. The reunion with my grandchildren was both easier and harder than I had imagined. 8-year-old Emma spotted me first, racing across the sand with a shriek that turned heads along the shoreline. "Grandma! Grandma!" Her small body collided with mine, arms wrapping tightly around my waist. 5-year-old Max followed more cautiously, studying me with solemn eyes before allowing himself to be hugged. "You look different," he announced, touching my new haircut with curious fingers. "Do you like it?" I asked, suddenly nervous about the shoulder-length style Sarah had convinced me to try. He nodded gravely. "You look like a mermaid queen." The afternoon passed in a blur of sandcastles, ice cream, and the children's eager updates about school and friends. Thomas kept a respectful distance, intervening only when the children's enthusiasm threatened to overwhelm me. As they prepared to leave, Emma clutched my hand. "Are you coming home now, Grandma?" Thomas tensed, but I was ready for this question. "This is my home now, sweetheart," I explained gently. "But I'm not far away, and we can see each other often." "Promise?" Max's lower lip trembled. "I promise." Over the following weeks, a new pattern emerged. Sunday afternoons became our time together, sometimes at the beach, sometimes exploring the small aquarium near my apartment, occasionally venturing to a movie when my arthritis made outdoor activities challenging. Thomas and I established a careful truce, rebuilding our relationship brick by slow brick. He made efforts I couldn't have imagined before, actually listening when I spoke, showing interest in my painting, remembering my doctor's appointments. Jovi remained the final hurdle. For 2 months, she stayed away from our gatherings, a shadow presence in the careful new relationship I was forming with Thomas and the children. Then one Wednesday morning, my phone rang with her number. "Nellie," she said when I answered, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. "I was wondering if we could talk." We met at a different cafe, away from the comforting familiarity of Oceanside. Jovi arrived precisely on time, dressed more simply than I remembered, her usual armor of designer clothes and perfect makeup noticeably subdued. "Thank you for meeting me," she began, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her coffee cup. I waited, offering neither hostility nor warmth. "I've been seeing a therapist," she continued when I didn't speak. "Thomas insisted. After everything. I didn't want to go. I thought it was all your fault. The house, the disruption to our lives." She drew a deep breath. "I was wrong. The therapist helped me see some patterns in how I treat people, especially you." "Why?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for years. "What did I ever do to make you treat me that way?" Jovi's eyes filled with unexpected tears. "Nothing. You did nothing wrong. My mother," she faltered. "My mother always treated my grandmother terribly. I grew up watching it, absorbing it. When you moved in with us, I just continued the pattern. It wasn't an excuse, but it was an explanation I hadn't considered. The cycle of dismissal and disrespect, passed down like a toxic inheritance. I can't promise I'll change overnight," she admitted, "but I'm trying. For the kids, for Thomas, and because it's the right thing to do." I didn't offer instant forgiveness, but I did agree to include her in our next Sunday gathering. A tentative olive branch extended across the broken ground between us. 6 months after I left the house that had become my prison, I hosted Thanksgiving dinner in my small apartment. Gerald helped me rearrange the furniture to accommodate a folding table that stretched from the living room into the kitchen. Sarah contributed extra chairs and her famous cranberry sauce. Thomas, Jovi, and the children arrived with pumpkin pies and slightly nervous smiles. Emma immediately attached herself to my side as I finished the gravy, while Max peppered Gerald with questions about his naval career. Jovi hovered uncertainly until I handed her a serving bowl. "Would you mind setting this on the table, and perhaps check if the rolls are done?" It wasn't friendship, not yet, but it was cooperation. A vast improvement from where we had been. As we gathered around the table, I looked at the faces surrounding me. My son, working to be better. My grandchildren, blissfully unaware of the complex adult emotions swirling beneath the surface. Jovi, making visible efforts to treat me with respect. My new friends, who had become a chosen family when I needed it most. Thomas raised his glass. "To Mom, for bringing us together today. And to new beginnings," Gerald added, with a warm glance in my direction. Later, after the dishes were cleared and the children had fallen asleep on my couch, I stepped onto the balcony for a moment of quiet. The November air carried a chill, but the sky was clear, stars reflecting on the dark surface of the ocean. Thomas joined me, draping a shawl around my shoulders. "Cold out here." "It's peaceful," I replied. "I do my best thinking with the sound of the waves." We stood in companionable silence, watching the moonlight create a silver path across the water. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said finally, "for everything, for not seeing you." I turned to face him, this son who had broken my heart and was now trying, imperfectly but sincerely, to mend it. "I see you now," I told him, my voice steady with the truth I had finally embraced. "And more importantly, I see myself." The ocean continued its eternal rhythm below us, advancing, retreating, always finding its way back to shore. Like the complicated love between parent and child, between past and future, between what was lost and what could still be found. I wasn't invisible anymore, and that made all the difference. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below, and meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.